everybody, grab your goat, grab your knife, grab your cloak, get ready to drop your cloak because it is time for the Witches Movie Coven. Yes, indeed. I am Patti Negri. I'm one of your hosts. This is Black Phillip. This is Richard-Lael. He is one of your hosts. He is Black Phillip. There's Courtney Buckley. There's Black Phillip. There's Heather Greene. There is Black Phillip. And there is Jason Mankey without Black Phillip.
I left him in my bag.
Well, get him.
Oh, shame. Oh gosh, I didn't know we need to bring a knife tonight. So
well,
I need to go grab mine.
It just kind of fit, versus I don't know.
It did fit the movie, didn't it?
It fit the movie, yes.
It did.
So the movie, The Witches, Necromancy. I couldn't even figure it out because it had too many names. But it comes from 1972.
Necromancy.
Yes, that is the movie. I just finished watching it not even a half an hour ago. And
you watched it in one sitting?
One sitting.
Oh,
wow,
I had to.
That's impressive.
Because I was starting to watch it at my brother's convalescent home, and that just wasn't appropriate. Opening scene with his little roommate.
I tried to watch it at Whole Foods, and then all of a sudden, boom, boobs, and I had to stop.
Yeah. So yeah, it's
welcome to the 1970s witch films, everyone.
Well, anyway, I don't even. Do we want to do any kind of a check-in? Or do we want to hold that for later?
Let's do it later. Let's do it later
because we're just right here. We've got our goats, most of us, and so if anybody hasn't quite seen, I can't imagine, but if any haven't seen or whatever this title is, do you have an unbiased Richard-Lael?
I do have an unbiased plot summary.
Be gentle now.
I'm just hoping that this will make the movie make sense to me.
One way or the other. I will say that this film has Orson Welles, and it's the story about boobs, more boobs and tits, naked satanic rituals, and more boobs. The real plot is a little convoluted, but it's about this woman who is having a baby but is dead, and she wants her own baby and not another one. And then her husband gets a job working in this little town called Lilith. And on the way to Lilith, there's a car accident, and this woman who lost her baby finds a doll by the side of the road at the crash site. And then instead of calling the police like a sane person would, she steals this haunted doll from the crash site. And they get to Lilith, and the neighbors are weird. There's no children, excepting for one weird little boy that you don't know if it's a hallucination or if he's actually there, but then people think that he's there. But there's no children allowed. And then it turns out that the husband is a witch, just like the rest of them. And the owner of the town and the owner of the doll company is Orson Welles' character, who wears a fake nose, by the way. Satanic rituals, trying to bring back his dead son, a lot of screaming, more boobs. And then I think it was an illusion. I think she had sort of like a precognitive thought. And then at the end, it was she's back at home after she'd lost her baby. And the guy gets the call that he needs to move to Lilith. And it ends with, no!
Clear as day.
Yeah, clear as day. So... yeah, so we need to discuss this further.
That's the movie that I saw. I'm with Richard-Lael.
Okay, so So there's two cuts you can watch. The ending actually ends differently depending on which cut you watch, and the boob count is lower in one versus the other. So if you watch the 1972 version, your naked body bits part is going to be lower than if you watch the 1983 cut, which has significantly more nudity and salacious witchcraft and drugs and rock and roll and all that kind of stuff. So it really depends on which movie you watch, depending on how it ended and how many naked body parts you saw. So that influences your unbiased opinion or unbiased account.
So which one did I watch? I watched the link you put from YouTube. It had naked people in the beginning.
If you watch the version that opened up onto a full-on witchcraft scene, yes, where they're in the circle and the puppet is there, and then he opens up and she's naked, and then they do that circle, that ritual dance in a circle with everybody's naked. That's the 1983 cut.
That's the one I saw.
Okay, is that what everyone saw? So we know what everyone.
I saw the 72 one, and then I only went back to watch the opening
of the 19, yeah. So the 1972 one opens up with a dictionary where he's reading the definition of necromancy, which is absolutely incorrect, but that's what he's reading. And then they open up into some kind of like she's floating and bewitched type, opening credits, and then they go on. So yeah, that's the difference between the two of them. So
is that the only difference? Does the movie end the same way?
No, the movie ends differently. The ending scene is different, and then there in the 1983 version, like there's a lot of differences. Like for example, you guys all, it's cut differently. A lot of the scenes are the same, but they're cut interspersed differently. And today, for the first time, I actually watched them back to back. I did a scene and I watched the other one, and I watched this one, and I watched just to see the exact differences. And like for example, when they go to the party at the guy's house where they say, oh, we're invited, they invited us over, let's go and let's go over to their house, and it's dark and they're like, nobody's there, and they walk in. Okay. So in the 1972 version, the couple walks in and all these people are sitting there in white, and that you've come to our ritual and we're playing this game, and witchcraft is this wonderful thing and you can't get out, blah, 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 blah. In the 1983 version, half the people are naked.
Yeah.
When they go to and there's another party at the beginning party also, it's the same thing. They say, oh, witchcraft is about all pleasures, or everything's about pleasures. And in the 1972 version, it's people reading tarot cards and astrology. But in the 1983 version, they cut in an orgy scene.
Sex.
Heather, I have a question.
Sure.
You watched both versions back to back today.
Yeah.
Were you mad at yourself?
No, because I'm a film historian and I love it.
Can we get "Were you mad at yourself" on a t-shirt, please?
Absolutely not. I find it absolutely fascinating because on the one hand, the 1983 version, the 1972 version actually has some expressions that are actually like nice, because when they go inside and they talk about witchcraft being something that's old and spiritual and various things, there's some, and then the visuals are just a bunch of people sitting around in white robes. That's kind of nice, right? When they do the version in 1983 where they talk about witchcraft being, the same thing, but yet they cut and half the people are naked and it's orgies and they're being whipped with chains and they're lying. There's one scene where
I was there for that one.
One of the naked people was lying on the mantle getting whipped.
I was excited about that.
Parties.
That's a scourge. That was a scourge, and there are witches.
But the dude was lying on the mantle.
I would be
hot ritual. He was lying on the mantle.
I would put that on my
been
mantle.
To a ritual at my house? We do that all the time.
You know what, Jason? That's
all the time.
I would like to say that where Jason does that all the time, I wish that I did that all the time. People would think that I do that all the time, but really, Patti has been to rituals at my house, and we sit here and we drink tea. That's about what I
it. And if I'm gonna lay on the mantle naked, I think it needs padding because it would get hot. My fireplace gets hot. I was just sitting there worried about their skin, not the whipping.
I think that there's fun stuff to both of them, but that's a conversation. Giving a context. Let me go back to context for a second here and give you a little history on this movie. So the interesting thing, there's, as I said, there's a million interesting things about every movie. And I'll say over and over again that movies are like people. You can't judge them by their cover, by the awards they get, by their fanciness. Sometimes there's a lot of good things in these movies or interesting things to talk about in movies that are just like outright terrible. And that's the case with this one. So one of the interesting things about this one, well, first of all, the first cut of this movie was not the one we see, not the one that you actually see that starts out with the dictionary. Okay, that's the 1972 version, Necromancy. That was not the first cut. They actually had a different cut. There was a legal battle. Apparently, the first cut had more of those salacious scenes, had more of the nudity, and it was gonna rate it R to X. Now, in 1972, this was the beginning of the rating system. So I've talked about before is that the rating system came in 1968, right around the time that Rosemary's Baby was released, right? So that movie really was the last witchcraft film that was in the old system, was in the system. So we had the rating system come right after that. And when the rating system came in, people could do whatever they want. They could do whatever, they could express anything they want. And then you were subjected to this rating system, which was G, PG, and R. Now, X was not a legitimate rating designation. That was something that came in that was imposed by the porn industry, which was changing its face too, because now they were allowed to express themselves in a different way than they had been before. So X was not a true designation by the film industry. So you were allowed to be these things. So we had sexploitation films because all of a sudden this stuff could be there. You had blaxploitation. You had films that were catered to the Black population of America for the first time. Oh my goodness, these people buy tickets. Let's make films for them. You had blaxploitation. So you also had witchcraft. And I call it witchploitation. So you have tons of witchcraft films at this time that were feeding off the popularity of not only witchcraft and Satanism, in the general population, but also the success of Rosemary's Baby. So this is one of those films. So you're going to get the drugs, the rock and roll, the sexuality, the witchcraft, all of the things in all of these films. And this is one of them. Okay. So basically this film is a, what's interesting is that this film, the one that came out in 1972, is not really a representative of what you saw during that period of time. The 1983 cut is more representative of what you might have seen in the 70s, but it was filmed in the 70s. The 1972 cut was filmed to be PG because they wanted to make money. And there was lawsuits about it. There was a number of cuts. And the 1972 cut was not the first cut. We never saw the first cut that had the boobs, that had the ceremonial magic, that had all of that stuff. That didn't come back out until they recut it in 1983. And apparently, from what I've read, there's a number of other cuts. So the 1972 cut that we're seeing is a dumbed down version of what the director wanted. The 1983 cut is more in line of what they probably originally wanted. So it's kind of, it's kind of interesting. But
I'm sorry to interrupt. Robert Hicks asked about where you could find the 83 version. Wasn't it under a different name, Heather?
Yes. So the version released in 1972 that opens with a dictionary. That's the one that was cut to be PG. And again, that is the one that is dumbed down. Let's say that one's called Necromancy. The one that was the recut released in 1983 is called The Witching. Okay, and that one is released in 93, often credited as 1972. And that one opens up with a full-on, you'll know exactly, you start it and all of a sudden you're in the middle of a witchcraft ritual, and within a minute everybody's naked. Okay, so and in ritual. So what's interesting to me is that the 1983 version, again, is very indicative and very exemplary of what you saw in the early 70s, because a lot of those films, half the people are naked in one way or another. So the 1983 version is more indicative of what you actually saw of witchcraft films in the early 70s than the actual release of this film. So, but you have to watch them all. It's fascinating. And there's so many things about this film that we can talk about. It may not be the best film. It's not going to win an Academy Award like last week's film, but there are very few films that actually have a real witch as a consultant on them.
Midnight Offerings won an Oscar?
No, it did not. I said this one, like last week, will not win an Oscar.
Oh, like last. I thought you said unlike last week.
No,
my mind was blown.
So I said I was giving you an entrance, Jason. I said, yes. And very few of these films, although influenced by Paul Hewson and the literary or the literature, the witchcraft literature of the time, very few of these films actually had, until the 1990s, had an actual witch consultant helping with the ritual. This one did. Very few of them did. And that's where I go. And he was, dun, Jason?
Raymond Buckland, who was one of America's first public witches and the man to bring Gardnerian Wicca to the United States in 1963. I'm actually currently writing a biography of Ray, and this shows up in the biography a little bit. In 1971, he goes to LA to shoot a syndicated talk show that existed in the early 70s. And while he was there shooting that show, he made an impression on some people in Hollywood, most notably the director of this particular picture, who asked if Ray would be a consultant on the film. Ray says in his memoir that's unreleased, he says that they actually did change some scenes because he said that this was not really representative of witchcraft, though he says they did not change enough scenes, which is pretty obvious, and that there were times when they did not listen to him. But he said they were still trying, at least to a small degree, to get some of the things right. And if you look at the film, especially the nudity, we talk about the nudity, but in the early 70s, people would have expected nudity amongst witches because the number one flavor of witchcraft, or the most publicized flavor, was Gardnerian craft. And Gardnerians are said to work naked in the nude, which is what Raymond Buckland would have been doing in the period. So it would make sense for the witches to be naked. And there are some real bits of witch ritual in the film. There's a line here and there. The problem is, of course, is that they say a line that relates to witchcraft, and then all of a sudden you get "and Satan" backing it up, which Ray would have been really horrified by, because one of his core beliefs was that there's absolutely no Satanism in witchcraft, and that there is no devil in witchcraft. And that allegedly there's actually a scene of Ray in the film, though I've watched it a couple of times trying to find him. He's supposed to be one of the witches in one of the Coven scenes, but he must be very far in the back because I've never been able to place him.
I hadn't found him either.
Yeah.
Let me answer. We never did answer Robert's question. YouTube, with that other title, it's free on YouTube. You can watch the whole thing.
Yeah. Just look for The Witching 1972.
Yeah.
It's there. And yeah, if you send a message to one of us, we can send you a link. It's there. That's the one that starts with YouTube has both of them, but the one that starts with the ritual you will find on YouTube.
I couldn't find it either, Robert. So thanks to Ms. Heather, we did find it. It is on YouTube.
Yeah,
I
reach
didn't
out.
watch, but now, Ms. Heather, since I only watched really the opening of the 83, and I watched the full 1972, and by watched, I mean tried to watch for like 5 or 10 minutes at a time, and then would play video games like, Tetris on my phone. How does it end differently? Because in the 72 version, it ends with it's all a nightmare, it's all a dream. She's getting called back. He's getting the call to come to Lilith. So you said it ends differently?
Yes, it's very different. So as they progress in the 1972 version, it really keeps her very innocent and kind of slowly sucks her into the witchcraft, where she finally decides that I'm going to do this puppet and I'm going to defy. It feels like a very defiant choice. And then she, winds up getting into the necromancy ritual and into the coffin, and then she wakes up. In the 83 version, she gets sucked into it. It's all kind of like a dreamlike thing, and then she gets forced into becoming a witch, and then eventually winds up they force her into the necromancy ritual, and she gets into the coffin. They close it up, and that's the end.
She didn't want to die, and she died.
She dies.
Mhm.
So it's much.
Well, I'm glad it has a happy ending.
So the 1983 version, I don't know about happy, but the 1983 version is more salacious. The horror points are different. Like the issue, the fear with the rats, the scene where the rats get her. This horror in the 72 version is much more secondary to the Satanism and the death and the witchcraft, whereas and it's more salacious. The 1983 one is all about the boobs and the things that are culturally inappropriate. I mean, the one party scene where they're all naked, they bring out a bong and there's rock and roll, and I mean it's everything that you're not supposed to do.
I mean, it is California. Those weirdos.
And that, yeah, and what I know from a little kid, that nobody over 30 was the cutoff. You were dead and could not cool after 30. I remember that from my brothers. I mean, and I don't want them to live past 30, kind of thing.
Well, one day when I turn 30, maybe I'll find out.
Yeah,
let us know.
Yeah, you're just like, what, you're like 20 with like what, 10, 20, 30 years of experience?
I am 83. But a warning, take good care of your body. It's going to be with you for a very long time.
So I think that if you were to go back and there's a ton of films from the early 70s, this was the first time that Hollywood decided they were going to actually like dive into witchcraft films. And most of them are exactly like this, with the exception of Rosemary's Baby, which actually set off the popularity of this. There are a host of films that are all about covens, where a young, unsuspecting couple or a single man usually runs into a coven of witches, and they're all satanic and all things go awry. So this is very, very typical. The 83 version is more typical of the 70s witchcraft films than the actual release. And so I could list off a host of these films. If you enjoyed this and you think this was fun, come on, Courtney. You're binge watching. I got a host of them. Mark of the Witch, Daughters of Satan. And what's fun about them is that you find these famous people in them. You have like Tom Selleck in Daughters of Satan. You have Christina Applegate as a kid in the one where Satan's a snake, and I can't think of the name of it right now. King something. You have Jack Nicholson in one called The Terror in the 60s. You have these famous people in them, and it's and there's ritual, and there's male witches, and there's boobs everywhere. I mean, literally naked boob. It's just part of it. It's part of what happens in the 70s. And when I do not rituals, when I do lectures about this period of time, I say after 1968, when they released Hollywood from the censorship, all hell broke loose, quite literally, because all of a sudden we have all these witchcraft films. Everything's about Satan. Everything's about witchcraft ritual. You have male witches. You have naked boobs. You have all kinds of stuff.
And that's the best part too, because when you're a star, you can do anything. You can even grab them.
Oh my God.
Oh,
Okay, then there's that.
Here's
this
the
is
thing.
gonna be a
I don't
long
think
year.
I don't think that this is a great thing, that like the floodgates open, because then what happens is someone like me watches any movie about witchcraft made in the 70s, and they all bleed together because the main actress looks the same in every one, and the story is the same in every one. And every time I watch one of these movies, I understand how I could have possibly fallen asleep during one and woken up to the witch who came from the sea, because I swear to God, I thought I did it again, and I was sitting up at my desk and I watched it in one sitting this time. But I really was like, oh, is this the same movie I already watched? I feel like I have complained before in the past about the gratuitous nudity and made myself sound like a prude, even though I'm not. And tonight I chose to watch, like Heather offered the fact that there was a boobs and goat version, and I chose the boobs and goat version because I thought, you know what, if I have to watch the same thing again, I might as well have something fun to look at. And then that was it. That was the only good part for me about this whole movie, was the mantle. That caught my
the mantle.
The rest of it, I feel like I don't know what I was watching. I could not follow any of it. Richard-Lael's unbiased plot summary made way more sense than anything I watched, and it was like I literally thought that I was like I couldn't have taken a page out of Patty's book and said, you know, I should have had an edible before I watched this, because I think I would have I ended up in the hospital, because what was happening? None of it made sense.
Oh, and the doll with toenail clippings in it.
Are you kidding me?
Don't you think it seems odd? Who would put toenail clippings in a doll?
I will put toenail clippings in Blackthorn's butthole magic if it means I don't have to watch another one of these.
Okay, go ahead, Patti.
No, I was just going to say what was fun about it. I just love the periodness, whatever cut it was, because honestly, girls who get naked in the 70s had a different body than the girls who get naked in 2020. Mm-hmm. It doesn't even look. I mean, we're so used to manufactured everything. It was really refreshing. It was really refreshing to see real boobs.
I have always wanted a 70s body, and I never had a 70s body until now, and I have one in the trunk of my car.
Yes, amazing. Perfect. Also,
you know what, Patti, I just love the positive spins you put on these things that are different. Like, you always find something super interesting and positive to say about that. I never even thought about that point. Like the body difference. That's really interesting.
Crazy different. Again, they had, I mean, real body, and they're all young girls. They're perfect bodies, but now all the girls would have a completely different breast set. I'm sorry, every girl that they would cast for that movie now would have different breasts, and that's it. I loved. I mean, horrible acting, horrible editing. I couldn't hear and understand hardly anything. I put closed captions on a little bit, but they kept calling Lucifer loser. On the
that was my favorite part.
Like, loser, hail loser. But I love the salaciousness of it. I love the representation of the era and how they represented witchcraft. And I love that Rob showing up the Buckland book. Who doesn't have that blue Ray Buckland book? We all do. Yeah, of course we do. Yeah.
I think the key there's several key things, again, we'll do a lot of movies that we do on this show are fun. We have us expansive, and this is one of those ones that's not going to win awards. We're not going to all love to watch it. None of us are going to go watch it again for fun, but it's important in terms of witchcraft representation, because you do have not only one of the first times, if not the first, as far as I can tell, that's recorded where a actual witch, Raymond Buckland, advised as best as he could, and he tried to get them to listen. And we also have the Wardrobe, the Witch's Cauldron Inc., which I tried to find. Actually did some research to try to find who they were, and could not find them in California or Long Island. And Long Island is where and Jason may correct me, but I believe at this period of time, that's where he was living. So I thought maybe they found the Witch's Cauldron Inc. there in Long Island where he was living, but I could not find it. I didn't check all the other states, so I don't know exactly who they were, but this is the first time that we could actually see a witch getting actual credit. Even though throughout the 70s, if you do watch a lot of these films that come from this time, like I said, The Mark of the Witch, Daughters of Satan, Satan's School for Girls, I could list off 10 of them. And if you go to my book and you go to the 70s chapter, you'll find all of them. They're all very similar. Most of these do have influence from Hewson, Buckland, all of the texts, Gardner, that were coming out at the time. This one is direct. So historically, for us witchy type people, this movie is significant because, hey, Buckland, first time that we actually had a real witch on the set trying to advise. It's not quite as evident in the rituals as Mark of the Witch or some of the other ones, but it's there, which is pretty darn cool. The nudity is very typical of this period of time. You'll actually see even more, and most nudity in these films is women. So you'll see a lot of that stuff as well. The other interesting part about this film historically, because I always have to do that and rain on everyone's parade, and be the professor, is Orson Welles. And there he is right there, because you got to love Orson Welles. He was very, Orson Welles was someone who was very in film. What's the word? He kind of bucked trends. He pushed boundaries with his work throughout. He was obviously the voice, if you didn't know, of the famous radio broadcast, which scared half of the country into thinking aliens were going to be attacking. I think that was like 1938 World of Worlds. Radio broadcast, Citizen Kane. But what's interesting about him in terms of witchcraft is that he did a film, a Macbeth version in the late 1940s, 1948 or so. It's a terrible version of Macbeth, but in it, he tried to represent the difference between the old religion and the new religion. And he really tries to make a distinction between Druidism was what he called it, and the old religion in Scotland versus the new religion. And you see that in this film too, where the people talk about the old religion. We're trying to tap into the old religion. Orson Welles was very, very interested in this distinction. And here you see that.
The old religion was absolutely satanic.
Well, according to what this movie says, it was. Go ahead, continue.
No, I was just making
elaborate.
Well, the fact that really Satanism, even references to Satan, it's really very contemporary. I mean, even within the last maybe 500 years, but even that was rare. It was just not. It was just not what one did. With the Church of Satan being founded in the 60s, that was the first satanic religion. So, like, overtly satanic. Mm-hmm. Now there were demon worshippers and things before, but those were very, very, very rare. But the fact this film says that it's the old religion and hail Satan.
Well, that was really the idea around witchcraft at that particular period of time. And people were truly convinced that this was the old religion. This was a religion that predated Christianity. In Margaret Murray's Witch Cult in Western Europe, She says that the horned god, which had been pagan, had been sort of replaced by Satan because people got confused because of all of the Christian influence going around. And it's also worth pointing out that in the 70s, if you were to buy a paperback book on the occult, you would read a chapter about Satanism, and you would read a chapter about witchcraft, and then probably UFOs and 5 or 6 other things. But all this stuff really blended together in a way that it doesn't blend together anymore. People were desperate for information. They were desperate for something that was different in the realm of spirituality. And sometimes they freely mixed what we today would call modern Wiccan style witchcraft with Satanism, mostly because there were so few materials and they just didn't know any better. And
I mean, I do that myself, but I do it on purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I just
right.
think people did what they could, what they had available to them. And in some ways, there are probably groups that look exactly like this in 1972.
I think you're right, Jason. And there's actually there's some documentary videos of some of the UK rituals that are very much I hate to say it because this was obviously dramatized, and nobody is killing people and shoving them into coffins to kill them and all of that stuff.
Not
but there's
anymore.
What was that?
Not anymore.
But there are aspects of it that Raymond Buckland's influence was there. If you look subtly enough, there definitely was pieces that were there.
Speaking of Ray, too, I don't want anyone to think that he was on the set the entire film. He was most definitely not. He had a day job. He was probably only on set for maybe a weekend, a day or two. But he did get to look at the script, and he did get to offer some ideas with the script.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he was there throughout the entire shooting of the picture.
And very rarely.
Possible.
Yeah, and very rarely, even in the 90s on The Craft, that was not the case either.
Yeah,
it hasn't been till very recently that was allowed, and it's very rare that a consultant is actually on the set changing stuff. It's usually script stuff, and that's what he did. But he actually, what's interesting is after, and I don't know if you saw that letter, Jason, but right after this was released, he tried to do a Macbeth version. He proposed a Macbeth, and they turned him down. So
you know why they turned him down? Because they thought he'd be more suited for a McRib.
Oh,
Yikes.
Oh goodness, who's that? Wait a minute. Who's that just showed up on our screen? I see a Transformer.
that is Omicron, who was the villain in the Transformers movie from '86, voiced by one Orson Welles. My first exposure to Orson Welles was in a Transformers film.
I did not know he voiced the Omicron. That's so crazy.
Unicron. Thank you, Kelvin. I did get that wrong. Yeah, the man apparently would do a lot for a paycheck at a particular period in his life.
He did.
He'd do a lot for a paycheck and a McRib.
And boobs.
There's also the really awesome.
All the people in this movie did.
There's also the really awesome Nostradamus documentary that he does, where he like reads all the quatrains and stuff, and it's like his face like super close to the camera, trying to creep you out. It was on HBO when I was a kid, incessantly, and I watched it all the time. So I know him as a Transformer, and I know him because of Nostradamus. That's really how I know him.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, he also did he did something called Voodoo Macbeth, and I don't know if you guys have heard about this or not, but he was fascinated with Macbeth. Like he loved to push boundaries of art and in this type of venue, theater and film. So, and they would not let him do Macbeth in the film industry. So he took to the stage and he would produce this thing called Voodoo Macbeth, an all black cast set in Haiti, and he did Macbeth, and it was called Voodoo Macbeth, and it aired, and you can actually, it's in the 30s, and you can see some pieces of it through the Library of Congress, and they just actually released a film about the production of Voodoo Macbeth, and it was very interesting. And this is what he would do. He would push boundaries of art, Citizen Kane was like that. Everything he did, he was very interested in pushing boundaries. And so that was one of the things that Orson Welles did, along with, just whatever for a paycheck and video. I don't know what he did by the end of his career. I think he passed in the 80s sometime, 85, 86.
You mentioned Macbeth, though. Buckland was involved with a Friedkin version of Macbeth that was going to be made. Who's the director? The director of The Exorcist.
Okay.
Friedkin, right? Mm-hmm. That's his name. And Buckland was flown out to L.A., picked up by a limo, got to go and talk to the director while he was writing his script for the thing. And Buckland says that they actually got to dance and do witch chants together in his office. And that they got along really well, but then the Macbeth project was dropped, which is a real shame. And that would have been just 2 or 3 years after this.
That must have been the same letter I have. It must have been for the same project where they dropped the Macbeth project. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
what could have been? What could have been?
Yeah, seriously. And I don't think they took him seriously, unfortunately. And he is a really influential figure. And I just don't think they took him seriously. And it was the 70s. And this was the first time. It was the first time that Hollywood actually entertained any reality of witchcraft. It was the first time witchcraft was popular. So, anyway, this is one of those films. I've been talking a lot. I know it's horrible, and I know Courtney's holding herself, but she's got to get some quotes in.
So
come on.
Here's the thing. Hold on.
Great quotes.
Okay, cool. I had a migraine from watching this movie, caused by watching this movie, and in defiance, because it's just how I felt after watching it. I, instead of doing quotes this week, brought another little something to surprise you guys with, which is I wrote a list of 5 things that I would have rather done to spend an hour and 16 minutes of my time.
Wow.
Watching The Killing Tree is going to be one of them.
Nope, it's not. Number 1, I would have rather spent an hour and 16 minutes scraping a mermaid tattoo off of my chest, a la The Witch Who Came from the Sea. Number 2, I would have rather spent an hour and 16 minutes online dating and pretending I liked it. I would have rather spent an hour and 16 minutes listening to Jehovah's Witnesses tell me about their Lord and Savior on my front porch. Number 4, I would have rather spent an hour and 16 minutes cradling a haunted doll in the attic of the Villisca Axe murder house.
I can help you with that.
Oh, there.
Oh.
No, there was one there. And lastly, and everybody buckle up. Lastly, I would have rather spent an hour and 16 minutes admitting to Jason that The Killing Tree and Your Highness are terrible movies and not saying a word in their defense for a whole hour.
Whoa, that is serious.
Whoa.
That is serious.
So in lieu of quotes, friends, that's what I came prepared with today because that was painful to watch.
Well, you know what? That was good, Courtney, but I have to say, I found this film to be rather titillating. I think it's good to have a good memory.
Mm-hmm.
They did their best to do everything within their power. It was really just mind boobling.
Yeah, the boobling. And the boobling was the best part for me. Like that was the part that I was able to enjoy a little bit, shockingly this time. Also, Colin Barrett.
Well, I'm glad you were able to get that off your chest.
I did. Thank you. Colin Barrett said, "What root canal did not make the list?" No, because a root canal is not painful enough to qualify.
Oh, please. This is okay. So you're not allowed in my academic class on witchcraft films because this would make the class, and I would have to call you up out of that.
Okay, listen. Here's
important role in witchcraft history.
I hear you.
Know your history.
I hear you, and I respect that. I do. Right. But I don't come from like when we watch these movies, I'm not watching them as a film historian, and I am watching them as a witch but I'm also watching them as someone who loves film, like just loves the cinematic experience. I love to go to the movie theater. I love to bring a blanket. I love to get immersed in the movie. So that's where I'm coming at it with. And this, literally, I said it out loud like 4 times while I was watching it. Like, I have a migraine while I'm watching it. Like, it's just not doing it for me. So from that perspective, while I do respect what it did for us, and I do respect its place in history, I really genuinely do, as a person consuming a film, it was one of the worst ones I've ever consumed.
That's okay.
Wow, that's wild.
And that's a fair, this is art, and that's a fair judgment. I respect that. I would not watch this again just for entertainment. I completely agree, but this is not one of those films. But
there was some great quotes.
I've seen worse.
There were some great quotes. I can't remember them. The one about something witchcraft gets a hold of you, and I'm not a quote rememberer. I'm not a joke rememberer. But I was going, oh my God, I hope we get that quote. I hope we get that quote.
I didn't do it on purpose, because this movie irritated me so much that it felt like it did not deserve my attention.
I liked the one that said, "It's a nice town with okay people."
Yeah, that was a good one.
I like
there are some beautiful lines in this one. When I was walking home from Whole Foods watching this on my phone today, they talk about the horned god, and at one point they say, "The only true God is the old God, the horned one, perfect God. He reflects the honest image of man, the good that is in it and the bad." And I was like, that is a pretty profound statement that I did not expect. And there's one other quote we'll do in the movie minute, which I also really liked. There are just these little bubbling moments, and yes, like Courtney, I cursed Heather's name several times while watching this movie. But I also found things to appreciate and enjoy in addition to the boobs while I was watching the movie.
Here's the thing for me. I think it was just the fact that it was on the heels of last week's film, which also I did not enjoy, that it seemed like, for me and my movie consuming abilities, I didn't have a good day today. It wasn't the day for me to watch this, especially on the heels of the movie last week. So I came into this, unlike Richard-Lael, I was so biased. I knew I was going to hate it. And I tried to give it a chance for about 7 minutes, and then I had a headache, and then that was the end for me.
So can I add something really funny to this? So I was doing some research on AFI and all this just to find out the details. And apparently the main couple, the wife, Lori, and the one she stabs when in the ritual,
Frank.
What was his name?
Frank.
Thank you. So apparently they met on the set, and then they wound up married, and then were married ever since. And someone, according to what I read, is that one of them said the best thing to ever come out of this movie was their marriage.
Gross.
Yeah. He owns a rare bookstore in West Hollywood.
What was that?
He owns a rare bookstore in West Hollywood.
Who
guy
does?
who played Frank. The guy who played Frank. Yeah.
The one who gets stabbed when he's wearing a goat head.
Yeah.
She kills him in the ritual.
What's his bookstore? Do you know?
It's on Wikipedia, but I can't remember the name of it right now. But I read up on these things. Also, we didn't talk about the goat head at the beginning of the movie.
The white one?
Yeah, that goat head is delightful.
That is not in the 1972 version.
I wouldn't think so, because you can hear Orson. It's like a replacement for Orson Welles. They must have used dialogue from the cutting room floor, but didn't have him available anymore, and then just used the goat head. And the goat head is very cute. It's not threatening at all.
I did like the goat.
Yeah, I just wanted to take the goat home. I wore a goat shirt today just because I like the goat so much.
That is nice.
So, overall, I'm not going to watch this movie again unless I'm studying. So I agree with you guys as far as the quality. It's not a great film. This is one of the films that came out of Rosemary's Baby was so successful. Let's make another one. And there's thousands of them. Witchploitation. None of them are as good as Rosemary's Baby. There are very few. But if you like this kind of cheese, low grade stuff, there are so many fun movies and you get to watch them and it's so much fun and you laugh and you're like, I would rather watch a string of these films than watch Your Highness any day. Sorry, Courtney.
See,
love your
no, fair. But this is why I point this out all the time, that when you and I talk about the movies that are so bad they're good, we are talking about very different movies.
Oh, it's true.
But this is not what I'm talking. I'm talking about so bad on purpose. It's stupid on purpose. This was just so bad.
But both are enhanced by drugs.
Yes, both are enhanced by drugs. I would watch it again. So do we want to vote or do we want to do the movie minute? I don't remember which we do first.
Movie minute.
I think the movie minute.
Okay, Jason.
All right. Let me begin with one word. Boobs. There are two versions of this film. One without boobs and one with boobs. Neither version is particularly good, but the movie is made more palatable by the inclusion of boobs and butts. By the power of Satan, I demand you appear. Boobs and butts. Boobs and butts. Boobs and butts. I really like boobs and butts. Boobs and butts. Boobs and butts. I really like boobs and butts. And speaking of Satan, this film would like to introduce you to Lollipop, an adorable satanic goat with the voice of Orson Welles. Before the days of Black Phillip, there was the shaggy, lovable Lollipop, purveyor of Luciferian novelties and other hellish delights. There are few things less terrifying than a Muppet goat speaking to a room full of boobs and butts. While Black Phillip wants us to live deliciously, Lollipop just wants to raise the dead. That's why one version of this movie is called Necromancy. The other, superior version, the one with boobs and butts, is called The Witching. And speaking of Orson Welles, the man loved paychecks. Why worry about tarnishing your legacy when you can star in a movie as bad as Necromancy in order to get a paycheck? Also, in addition to the paycheck, Orson was sometimes surrounded by, you guessed it, boobs and butts. Boobs and butts. Filmed in 1970, I will give some credit to this film. There are moments where the witchcraft looks like actual witchcraft. Hats off to you, Raymond Buckland. It's still not much of a selling point, definitely not as much as boobs and butts, because a lot of the witchcraft is still very, very wrong, but at least it's familiar. Also, I will be forever indebted to this film for the line, and witchcraft is the only honest religion that makes things happen now in this lifetime. Because that is some real wisdom. Despite that, my inner 14-year-old is still focused on boobs and butts.
That's exactly right.
That song will be stuck in my head for the rest of time.
Yeah, we're going to be singing that
welcome.
song. Let me just tell you, you're going to be singing that song. Put that on the playlist, because anytime you watch anything from this period of time, that is, the women are always naked. Like, literally, there's boobs and butts in all the movies from this period of time that involve witchcraft. So save that, because you're going to be using it again.
Even in the documentary films. Even the documentary films have boobs and butts. They're all full of boobs and butts.
Sexploitation, witchploitation. You got it.
It was a great time to be alive. That's for sure.
I feel like instead of cackling tonight, we should boobs and butts. Like,
okay, we will. Before we do that, it is time to wands up, wands down.
I was gonna wands down, but the more we talk about this film, like the more I kind of like it.
It's kind of fun.
It's kind of fun.
These movies are kind of fun.
Nothing about it was fun for me.
I love the furniture.
I'm giving it
a
one more on the clock.
I give it wands up for the furniture. I give it wands up for Lollipop the goat. I give it wands sideways for Orson Welles. I give it wands way up for boobs and butts.
Oh, well, way up for boobs and butts, but
and I'd like to point out
and cheer for Raymond Buckland's, bucking a trend and becoming one of the first that we know of, consultants on a movie. So hey, good try, Raymond.
And we have male boobs. We have male butts in this too. I don't want anyone thinking it's just female butts.
And that is even more rare. Male
Yeah.
butts and male full frontal nudity is extremely rare in these movies. So yeah. Hey.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll give it a black Phillip butt.
Mine was getting more and more erect as we spoke. Boobs and butts.
It just goes to say, if you say boobs and butts enough.
So we know what we are doing. I loved watching the film. Again, bad and everything, but I liked it. What are we doing next week?
Dungeons and Dragons, the recent film, 2000 and what? 22? 23?
Came out just last year.
Yeah. We're back to the current age, so there probably won't be boobs and butts.
Damn.
But there is the best of the Chris's, Chris Pine.
There doesn't need boobs and butts because it has a plot.
This had a plot, a
stretch.
very simple one, but it had a plot.
All right. Well, why don't we do a
plots? They were buried in them.
Oh yeah, yeah! Look at that beautiful girl right there. Who's that beautiful girl? Tabitha. We had so much fun. I got lots of great pictures too. That is awesome.
Spiderwick Chronicles. I just saw someone recommend that. I'm going to write that down on our list.
Which Dungeons and Dragons? The new one that came out just last year, Robert Hicks.
Yes.
Not the crappier one that came out 20 years ago.
No, the recent one.
Heather, while you're writing things down on the list, I promised my son, because he came at me with a whole pitch ready, that I would suggest the Dark Crystal at some point.
Oh, heck yeah. I'm on to that. Tell him I love him already. Yes, I put it down. Dark Crystal.
While we have just a couple minutes left, everybody have a good check-in. What's going on? Where can people see you? Oh, there's me. I'll start with me. Tuesday, you'll see me teaching at my school, University Magicus. You'll see Richard-Lael there too. Wednesdays, you best be here. Then I'm going to, in March, I'm actually going to be in Las Vegas at the Halloween Emporium, 365 days a week Halloween, but we'll be doing seances and classes. Then I'm going to Arizona. Then I'm going to Romania, and you guys should come to all of them. And then for the rest of everything, just go to my website. That's me. I'm here. Go, Heather.
Oh, okay. That's me. So I think this is a little out of order as far as the graphic, but in March I'll be at Pagenicon in Minnesota. And of course, I am on the board for Mystic South. So we are engaged in getting things going. So if you're interested in presenting there and you have some witchy occult stuff to share, please go ahead on a website and apply, and see you in Atlanta in the middle of the summer in Hotlanta. And then I'll be doing Charles Oz, which is a Wizard of Oz conference in Charlotte. But between then and in all between, I'm working with authors and here in Atlanta doing my thing and writing my articles, as always.
Jason.
The end of February begins a lot of touring. I'll be at Convocation in its new location in Ypsilanti, Michigan, February 22nd through the 25th. I will see Heather at Pagonicon in Minnesota, just outside Minneapolis. After that, I'm in Florida for a few days. And then at the end of March, over Easter weekend, appropriately enough, at the Sacred Space Conference outside of Baltimore, Maryland, with more stuff to come after that. I'm already tired. Can I just stay home?
This is me, Richard-Lael. Richard-Lael is one name, not two. If I were just Richard, I'm not going to tell you since you can't even see me mouth it. I am here in New Orleans. You can find me at thegentlemanpsychic.com. Message me on my Gentleman Psychic Facebook page. You can message me on my regular page. You can come and see me. I teach at Magic University, Magic U. I will be traveling at some point, but I don't remember the date, so I'll get those to you. And that's it.
And Courtney.
Hey, I did my homework. Where's my graphic?
What happened?
All right. There it is. Okay, so that's me, Courtney Buckley. I am at the Themes on all the socials. You can follow me there. I sometimes stream on Twitch to play video games, but my pride and joy, the Anti-Valentine's Day tour, is coming back in Salem, put on by the Salem Night Tour, which is my tour company that I work for. The Anti-Valentine's Day tour is for those people who, like me, think Valentine's Day is a waste of time because love stinks. So come and hear all about stories of love gone wrong in Salem. And you can get tickets there at salemghosttours.com or scan that QR code.
Thank you. And it is that time. So we're going to do the boobs and butts song over.
I think we should.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Jason, lead us in.
Boobs and butts.
Boobs and butts.
Boobs and butts. Boobs and butts. Boobs and butts.
Boobs and butts.
Boobs and
Boobs
butts.
and butts.
I don't know if I can do this.
Everyone loves boobs and butts. Boobs and butts.
Boobs and butts.
Boobs and butts.
Boobs and butts.